asking that we hear that when someone is in situated in their Svarupa, like for example cowherd boy or like mother any.
Can you say that again louder?
When they're situated in their Svarupa, then they are fully satisfied with their rasa, and they don't desire to be anything else or serve Krishna differently. But at the same time, sometimes we hear how certain personalities like Lakshmi Devi or Uddhav or the Pandavas, they are performing austerities to enter into Braj Lila. It seems like they want to enter into different rasa. And how can that be reconciled?
Okay, good question. So for that, if you have your Svarupa, I'm turning to chapter 11. And I'm on page 136. So if the Svarupa is eternal, or if one has multiple Svarups, like Narada Muni, if they're eternal, why do we see pastimes where Uddhav performed austerities and prayed that he would become a shrub or a creeper in Vrindavan, so that when the gopis passed him by on their way to meet with Krishna, he would receive the dust of their feet. Like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody asked Gurudev that. If such a great devotee like Uddhav could not pass the gopis' entrance examination to see if he was eligible to learn how to get prem like theirs, how can I hope to get some prem? So Gurudev replied, he's a Siddha Bhakta, a devotee who's already in the stage of perfection. So he cannot attain a new relationship with Krishna. But we still have that, he called it independence, but what he means is we can still desire, but we can't desire anything that's not what's already our relationship. By serving and hearing from Rasik Tattva Vaishnavas, you will develop a greed for serving the gopis. In other words, we're not bound like him. We're independent to desire to serve like the gopis. That's what independent means. Then, by devotional practices, you can go to Goloka Vrindavan. One can even attain the state of enjoying the rasa dance with the gopis to serve them there. So next question. In that connection, we hear that Narada Muni, who is also Siddha, performed so many austerities at Narada Kund, and he did attain the body of a gopi. He was already Siddha, and yet he attained it. So why can't Uddhava get it? So Gurudev replied, Uddhava will not attain a gopi body. Narada eternally has so many forms in the sweet pastimes of Krishna. In one form, he is Madhu Mangal, Krishna's coward friend. In another form, he's Naradi Gopi. In another form, in Vaikuntha, he's with Lord Narayan. And in another form, in Swarga, heaven, he's with the demigods. So he has so many forms, and they're all eternal. There may be a pastime of him desiring that to show the glory of Gopi Bhav, but it's just a Naravata Leela, in the same way that Lord Shiva performed austerities and received the darshan of Yoga Maya, who dipped him in a pond, and then he got the form of a gopi and the name Gopeswara. So, but that's just a pastime because Lord Shiva's original form, from whom Sadashiva comes, who's the Vishnu incarnation, Lord Shiva as Rudra, and there's so many expansions of Lord Shiva, even Madhvacharya, Bhima, they all have their origin in Gopeswara Mahadev. So it's just a pastime with him and with Narada. And then Madhav Maharaj says, Baladev Prabhu is also an example of this. He has Vatsalya, parental mood, Sakya, the mood of a friend. The reason he has Vatsalya also because he's a friend, but he's an older friend. And the older friends, they have some Vatsalya in them to protect Krishna. He has Dasya mood, the mood of a servant, because he's assisting in so many pastimes. Like he becomes the Purusha avatars to create so many worlds. And even Madhurya, the mood of the gopi, when he assumes the form of Ananga Manjari, and that form of Ananga Manjari is also eternal. So then Gurudev says, others like Nanda Baba and Jashoda, Vasudeva and Devaki, and Akrura do not add other rasas to their already eternally existing ras. They only have one ras. If one has a sthai bhav, sthai means foundational, and bhav means ecstasy or mood. So if one has a sthai bhav in only one mood, he will always be in that one mood. In the beginning of one's devotional practices, by hearing about the Lord pastimes, one may want to serve Radha and Krishna, he may want to serve Ramchandra, he may want to serve in so many ways, but that desire is not coming from our soul. It's coming from tradition or our minds, our emotions. But as we advance, then we find out who we are, we develop a taste for that. Is that clear so far?
Yes.
Only does Krishna decide that? Like he decides which rasa each jiva is in, or?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, because it comes in the manufacturing process. I decide what will be the constituents of this quilt when I make it. So Krishna decides it, but also because he knows all living entities. He says in the Gita, I know everything that has happened in the past. I know everything that is happening now, and I know all things yet to come. I also know all beings, but me no one knows. So he knows what we're like. It's not a forced process. He knows what we'll become mad after. Then the next question, does the soul somehow or other separate to be in two forms, in two pastimes? So Gurudev says, Krishna is a Khanda Tattva. Akhanda means undivided or whole. So how can he manifest in millions of forms? We cannot imagine anything inconceivable, even in this world. Like, can you imagine, Jayasri, can you imagine how a cow will eat grass and from that milk is produced? These are inconceivable things even in this world. Do you know how your dead nails grow? Okay, so here's Gurudev also gives his inconceivability in this world. Seeds come from trees, and trees again come from seeds. You get a seed from a tree, and then another big fat tree grows from that seed. Flowers and leaves come. How? We cannot imagine this. So what to speak of Krishna? Everything about Krishna is inconceivable. I remember Prabhupada once said, if God does not have some inconceivable things, then what is the meaning to his being God? So then another question. Consciousness is always expanding, and Krishna is always expanding. So do Krishna's devotees also expand, even in their perfect spiritual forms? So then Gurudev answered, yes. For example, Mother Yasoda has unlimited forms. Wherever Krishna is, she is. Because if Krishna is in millions of universes at the same time, so is she. This is true for Nanda Baba also, and for Madhu Mangal and all of Krishna's other associates as well. But their ras will be the same. Okay, Manju?
Yes. Actually, I got another question coming up now.
All right.
Like, and then sometimes we hear like there's two different like perfected personalities in one person, like Madhvacharya or even Srivas Pandit also, isn't it? Like
Madhvacharya, oh yes, you mean like, for example, Vyasadev and a cowherd boy joined together to become Vrindavan Das Thakur. Or Prahlad and Brahma joined together to become Haridas Thakur.
yeah.
So these are all inconceivable things. How is it that a disciple of Gadadhar Pandit, who is Radharani herself, and his disciple's name is Gadadhar Das, and who is he in Goloka Vrindavan? He's Radharani's duty. He's her effulgence. Like we pray, Radha Krishna duty subalitam, Nami Krishna Svarupam. So Krishna is covered with Radharani's effulgence and her complexion. So Radharani's effulgence is Gadadhar Das, who is the disciple of Gadadhar Pandit. These are all inconceivable things. And Gurudev told me once, as long as you think you're a lady or a lad, then it'll be inconceivable to you. If we perfect our bhajan, everything becomes clear.
Okay.
And then even that inconceivable, unconquerable Ajita becomes Jita, conquered. Okay, and then I think Lalita had a question.
Yeah, I had a question.
How come none of you age? All of it's exactly the same as during Prabhupada's time, Gurudev's time.
My question is, I was trying to understand this, the eternal time and linear time, and Kamala was trying to explain everything to me, but still I had some questions that was clear to her, but I couldn't get it in my understanding. So I wanted to ask, which is, like when it says that the Jiva is the manifestation of the Lord's marginal potency, does it refer to like the eternal time or the linear time? And then also,
we have all the qualities of Krishna in a tiny quantity. Like you have the mine, the gold mine, where miners go in and dig for the gold. And then you have a gold bracelet. So qualitatively, they're the same. And quantitatively, the gold in the bracelet is very tiny, and the gold in the mine is very large, right? So similarly, we have all the qualities of Krishna in minute quantity. So if Krishna is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, so is the soul. Two analogies are given. Even in our tatastha situation, when we become realized, then we're not, although we're the same person, we're no longer called tatastha. Then we become called parshada, or associate. We're the same person. Now we're like a seed of who we really are in our constitutional position, which is eternally situated in eternal time. So because Krishna is Chid Vastu, means he's a spiritual substance, the Jiva is also Chid Vastu, also conscious and eternal. Even ontologically, the means what makes something what it is. Ontologically, the tatastha jiva, or the jiva bound by Maya, doesn't have any of the qualities of Maya. Everything material, there's nothing material in the jiva. There's no temporality. We're eternal. We're full of knowledge and full of bliss, but that's in potential until we realize who we are. Does that answer the question? We're eternal. Krishna's eternal.
Right.
So our relationship is eternal,
So it is eternal.
but it's not realized in this linear time until linear time meets with eternal time. Let's say, here's the outer circle of eternal time, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then here's the inner circle of linear. Well, here's linear time. It's going in a line.
Right.
So let's say I turned away from Krishna and I jumped on the wrong side of the knife.
Yes.
And then now I'm an aardvark, I'm a plum tree, I'm scaby, I'm a demigod, I'm a human, and then I'm a worm, and I'm just going all over the place in abject forgetfulness. Then I meet Guru, and then I start my sadhu sangha, and then I start my trek up to
Second circle.
Ado Shraddha to sadhu sangha to bhajana priya. And then when I meet Bhav Bhakti, then the Svarupa Shakti from the eternal world descends into my heart from an eternal associate. And then everything becomes gradually realized. That's why devotee in Bhava Bhakti, he can see his spiritual form within him. And he has three stages. One is Antardasha, which means he completely forgets his outer self. I am Lalita Devi Dasi. I am Jai Sri Devi Dasi. He's just fully absorbed in his identity as whatever, Rati Manjari, Rupa Manjari. And then sometimes he's an Arja Bahir Dasha. Dasha means stage, which means half internal, half external. He'll lose that vision of himself in the pastimes, and he'll roll and weep. But he's not yet identifying with his outer body, his sattvic body. And then he comes to Bahir Dasha, which is the outer consciousness. And then he remembers I'm Raghunath Das Goswami. And he still feels separation from the inner, but he can't feel that he's in it. So he's feeling separation, weeping, but he can still write and speak and go on parikrama, offer obeisances. So in the stage of Bhava Bhakti, that the devotee has those three stages. Then he comes to Svarupa Siddhi, which is the highest stage of Bhava Bhakti. And then he relinquishes his static body and takes birth in anywhere that Krishna is having his own lila in any universe. So that starts his Vastu Siddhi, or his spiritual body, and that's when the linear kind of meets, you could say, meets the eternal time. We can only try to understand it with our intelligence, but we'll never understand it until we do pure bhajan. Like I think I gave the example of Prabhupada. Before he came to America, when he was in India, he would read in a book that in America it snows. And he would tell his friends, in America it snows. But when he came to New York and found himself in 1 foot of snow, he understood in America it snows. By realization. Does that answer your question? At least intellectually.
That's what she wanted.
That's what she wanted. And the mathematical explanation.
Which is no understanding. Gurudev said intellectual understanding is no understanding, but no understanding is better than no understanding. So, did you have another question?
I have a question, Syamarani Didi. I was
Okay.
thinking, by association, I think I'm this body, although I'm completely transcendental and spiritual. I fully believe that I am who I am in this life, and whichever I was in any other life. So if in this life, let's say I associate with someone who's established in a specific mood, by that association, I will imbibe that mood automatically, like I'll imbibe Maya from material, elements. So then I'll develop that desire, and by that, if I stay in that association, that desire will increase. That's my experience with.
I'm sorry. If I stay in that position, what?
If I stay in that specific association, whether it be material or spiritual in any rasa, then I'll develop desire for that, like I have desire for Maya when I'm associating with Maya. So based on that association, it seems that my desire increases and increases. But how my original constitutional desire that is eternally manifest in eternal time, how does it take place if I don't really come to that kind of how does the arrangement take place?
How does what take place?
How does the arrangements for if I'm in a kind of association that is how do you say?
Let me ask you a question, if I could just interrupt. How did you happen to come? How did the arrangement come that you met Gurudev?
Well, in my case, in linear time, it was completely accidental. I didn't want.
What?
It
was what?
In my case, what I see is that it was completely accidental. From my perspective.
Accidental.
From my perspective.
Means Krishna made the arrangements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did. Because you know what I was thinking? I was thinking, if I'm in that kind of association and I start praying to God, I really want to be, a servant of Ram. Because when I watch Ramayan, I was so enamored with the whole Ram Leela that I thought I wouldn't mind being Ram Leela at all, actually. And I understand this because I have no mood. But then, what if I stay like that? My desire increases, and I start praying to God for that. What will He do? It's that stupid question, isn't it?
Okay, good question. Three things came to mind. One, there was a devotee of Ram named Janaki in Bombay, and she was an ISKCON devotee. And all her life she worshipped Ram. And then she got an ISKCON guru. And that ISKCON guru at that particular time in his life, he was seeing Gurudev for a few years. Mm-hmm. So he brought her to Gurudev. And by Gurudev's influence, because Ram, being a Ram Bhakta, was not in her soul, it was only in her tradition. Mm-hmm. So she changed. Mm-hmm. Another example, a real Ram Bhakta this question was answered by both Srila Gurudev and Srila Bhaktivedanta Bharati Goswami Maharaj. In very similar ways, they answered it. And both those answers are in the Svarupa, perhaps even in this chapter. If a Ram Bhakta comes into Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, because it's so prominent in the world, but he's destined to be a Ram Bhakta ultimately, because that's his Svarup. Then what happens is he may take initiation and get the Diksha mantras. And then, because the Gopal mantra is for all rasas, if you get Gopal mantra and Kam Gayatri mantra, Gurudev explained, then it's most likely that you're going to be a manjari. But if you just get Gopal mantra, that you can go anywhere. So he's chanting his Gopal mantra, and then he comes to a certain stage where he's ready to receive the association of an Uttama Mahabhagavad, who is the ocean of the mood that's really in his soul. At that time, Krishna picks him up, brings him to Ayodhya, quote unquote, accidentally, and then he'll meet that guru. So another example is Gopal Bhatta Goswami, when he was young, and his family, his father and two uncles. By tradition, they were in the Sri Sampradaya, worshippers of Lakshmi Narayan. And then when the appropriate association came to them, it was their destined time. Now, who is that who came to them?
Mahaprabhu.
Who is the appropriate association?
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. No.
Right, during the rainy season. And because they were friends and in a joking way, he switched them. Oh, you're Lakshmi, she tried to get in the Rasa dance, couldn't do it. And he switched them to what they really are. And of course they really are that, because Prabodhananda Saraswati is Tunga Vidya. Eternally Radharani is one of her best friends. And Gopal Bhatta is Gunamanjari, one of the Pran Sakis. So they didn't just become that. One last example is the case of Shamananda Prabhu, who was previously Dukhi Krishnadas, a disciple of Hridaya Chaitanya. And he had an inclination towards Sakyaras because that was what his guru was expressing. And then when the time was right, his Gurudev, knowing that this is the time, because he's also a self-realized soul, but in Sakyaras, he sent him to Vrindavan to be under the tutelage of Srila Jiva Goswami when his real Swarup came out. Of course, he's already a Nityasiddha, but just to teach by example.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Definitely, yes. In the case of like Jagadananda Pandit, is it Leela that he identified as a maidservant of Srimati Radhika? When Mahaprabhu said he's Satyabhama, Satyabhama, is it? Isn't it?
Joking.
Is that joking Leela, or is that? Because he's very strong about.
Is that what, joking Leela?
I mean,
that's joking Leela.
Okay.
Gurudev explained that that's joking Leela. He said, "Oh, you're trying to keep me away by throwing me in Dwarka?"
Okay, yeah.
He himself, in Prem Vivard, calls himself a maidservant of Radharani.
Yes, okay.
Also, Gopi has a question.
Hello, Didi.
Hare Krishna.
Hello. We've been hearing that the detached Jiva needs help from Shri Guru to attain his Svarupa. I was just wondering if the liberated jivas, do they need help from Shri Guru as well?
Help for what?
Are they do they already realize their own Svarupa, or do they need to go through the
What is
process
the
as well?
definition of a liberated jiva?
Definition of liberated jiva.
Muktir hitva annatarupa svarupena vyavastita. Real liberation or mukti is when one sees his own form and Krishna's form, and they relate to each other. But always anugatya or under guidance is there even in the liberated state, because the manjaris are under the guidance of Rupa Manjari, Rati Manjari, Vrinda Devi, Lalita Vishaka. Even Radharani is under guidance. In fact, in Hamsadutta, I was just reading the English translation of Hamsadutta, produced by the Chitri Didi, and there, Lalita is sending a message to Krishna that, oh, what a wicked person I am. And now I'm realizing, now that you're away in Mathura, I'm realizing that what a wicked, hard-hearted person I am, that I was the one who ordered Radharani to keep her man. Don't give up her man. Otherwise, Krishna would take her lightly. Don't be easy. Because I impressed upon her to keep her man, she could never fully enjoy with you. She was always unsubmissive. So even Radharani is under guidance, what to speak of everybody else.
Okay, thank you so much.
Is that the end of the questions? Then I can just go on with something else.
Yes, that's. Thank you. There's just one more. Is there a Sanskrit word for linear time?
Again? What?
Is there a Sanskrit term for linear time, like there's a Sanskrit term for eternal time, Nitya?
Let me see. Because one of the chapters of course it would be in Jiva Dharma. Because Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about the two time factors in Jiva Dharma. Here, Prakat Kal. So in Sanskrit, the eternal time, which is also called eternal present, which is also called metatemporal, which is also called absolute. In Sanskrit, it would be Nitya Vartaman Kal. Vartaman means present, the present time. And then material time would be temporal time, relative time, linear time, or prakrit means material, kal. Prakrit, kal.
Okay.
Is that at the end of the questions? Then I can go on to another aspect of this.
May I ask a question?
All right.
Is that okay?
Yes.
We have time.
If
Okay.
you speak loud, because it's very hard to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Very good.
Okay. So in Param Gurudev's biography, Srila Gurudev says that...
I'm losing you. Can you speak louder?
1 second. Srila Gurudev says that the constitutional appearance, name, and mood of the jiva is present even in the conditioned stage, at which time it remains latent in an unmanifested form. So the question is, if the conditioned soul has no Svarupa Shakti, what is it that is present in the conditioned stage?
Okay, so you gave the answer. I'll read another sentence saying the same thing.
Thank you.
This is the cover of the book. The back of the book tells about the cover of the book. A tree's particular features are not directly manifest in the seed. but still the seedling and the tree, with its leaves, branches, fruits, flowers, and flavor, are present in the seed, but in an unmanifest form. We never see a deviation from this. In the very same way, everything, the Jiva's constitutional name, form, bodily limbs, and nature, are present in an unmanifested form within him. So present, but in latent form. Latent means unmanifest or dormant. Dormant means unmanifest. Okay? Then the next sentence. When the essence of Hladini and Sambit arises in the heart of the Jiva by the association of a bona fide Guru and Vaishnavas, then the Jiva's constitutional form, whatever it may be, gradually begins to manifest. The Svarupa of the Jiva means, another word for Swarup is Siddhadeha. Another word for Swarup is constitutional form or constitutional position. Another name is, which is concomitant in the constitutional form, is his ras, meaning everything about him, his appearance, name, form, activities, etc. How his braid looks, her braid looks, everything. When, you can see here, it says, when the essence of Hladini and Sambit arises in the heart. That means it hasn't arisen in the heart of the conditioned Jiva. So in the seed form, when we just have a latent taste for a specific ras, which comes at the time of manufacturing, that is not permeated with Svarup Shakti. When we get our when we realize our constitutional form, that constitutional form or Svarup is permeated by the Svarup Shakti. Because if the Svarup Shakti was already in us now, we could never be covered by Maya. Because Svarup Shakti can never be covered by Maya. So in our constitutional form, that's it. It's permanent. It's sthai bhav. Sthai. It's fixed. You can never fall from it. That's why no one can ever fall from Vaikuntha. Because the Svarup Shakti, which is the makeup, constitutional form, or Svarup, is never covered by Maya, never influenced by Maya. Dhamna svena sada nirastakuhakam sat yam param dhimahi. I worship that eternal Lord, Krishna, who is eternally residing in his eternal abode, which is forever free from illusion. Does that make it more clear?
Yes, so can you use the analogy of...
Louder? Louder.
Can you use the analogy of fire in wood?
What?
The analogy of fire, which is present in a latent way in wood, and it requires external fire to manifest it.
Right.
Okay.
Or
yeah,
the rubbing of the wood.
Perfect. Jai, dandavats.
Okay, dandavats. I know that's been on your mind for a while, so I'm glad it got cleared up somewhat. All right, no more questions, then I'm going to start my own subject of this subject. And then we'll leave you on a cliffhanger at the end till next week, okay? All right. I'm reading from chapter 5, which starts on page 69, which is called Awarded Means Manifested. And I'm going to read you the introduction. In pursuance of the Siddhanta, or conclusive established truths, presented by our Gaudiya Acharyas in the previous chapters, the aim of chapter 5 is to share more about the Jiva Svarupa with regard to being awarded or manifested. One philosophy said it's manifested, meaning it's already there, but it's latent or dormant or in seed. And then the other philosophy is that it's awarded. You don't have it yet, but it's coming from outside. Its theme, the theme of this chapter, journeys the reader through a description of the secrets behind the history of Narada Rishi's being, quote unquote, awarded the spiritual form of an associate in Vaikuntha. This entire chapter is a translation of a Hindi discourse given by Srila Gurudev on November 23rd, 2002. So now I'm gonna, because there are two particular verses used by the other philosophy. One is a poetic rhyming verse from the Bhagavatam, and another is a prose verse, or was that a contradiction? Prose verse, I don't know how you say a prose verse. By Jiva Goswami and Priti Sandarbha. Okay?
Yeah.
So, the other philosophy uses these two verses, among others, to try to prove that Gurudev said something funny today about trying to prove that water is fire. So a slok has been mentioned. Do you remember this slok? You can check. Bhagavatam 1:6-28. In the description of the chapter of Narada Rishi. Very, very important verse that Gurudev quotes a lot in a lot of his lectures. Prabhujamane maye tan sudham bhagavatim tanum arabdha karma nirvano nyapate panchabhotika. Having been, quote unquote, awarded a transcendental body befitting an associate of the personality of Godhead, Narada speaking himself, I quit the body made of 5 material elements, and thus all acquired fruitive results of work, karma, stopped. So Gurudev is explaining, prayujamane, after having been awarded the body of an eternal associate, Narada's pancha bhotika, or the body made of 5 pancha, material elements, bhotika, was dissolved. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the commentaries of Jiva Goswami and other acharyas, there are explanations of this shlok. So, in the explanation of this prose statement of Jiva Goswami and Priti Sandarbha, this verse, Prayujamani, is mentioned in the purport. So this is the verse in Priti Sandarbha, in English. The first words, in case you hear those first words again somewhere, Vaikuntasya Bhagavato Jyotir Amsabhuta. Okay? In Vaikuntha, there are unlimited spiritual forms, which are all Jyotir Amsa Bhuta, forms which have emanated from the effulgence of the form of the Supreme Lord. When a devotee becomes liberated, then the Lord makes that soul one with those unlimited forms. Doesn't it sound like there's a form waiting for us in Vaikuntha? We don't have that form latent in the heart. And then when we go to Vaikuntha, we kind of merge with that form, right? One devotee sarcastically compared this with, there are coats waiting in the closet for someone to come to Vaikuntha and put it on. Or there are so many moving cars in Vaikuntha, but there is some parked cars also waiting for somebody to come and drive it. Those sarcastic jokes about the wrong interpretation of this shloka. So far clear?
Yes, so far clear.
We hear, this is Gurudev, We hear that Srila Jiva Goswami has written in Priti Sandarbha, Anuched 10. What's an Anuched? Like a chapter? It's like a chapter. In relation to Salokya Mukti. Salokya Mukti means getting the liberation of being able to live on the same Vaikuntha planet as the Lord. There are unlimited spiritual bodies of associates in the Vaikuntha planets that are manifested from the effulgence of Bhagavan. These spiritual bodies are waiting to be occupied by the living entities who have become perfect by sadhan bhajan. When the jiva attains perfection, the Lord, he's speaking about this other interpretation of this verse, or how this verse is perceived, Gurudev is. When a jiva attains perfection, the Lord gives him one of these bodies. He mixes a particular associate's body with the jiva and gives that body to him. These associates' bodies are illuminated by the Lord's energy, yet they are near jiva, inactive or dormant, while waiting for the jiva to attain perfection. Life is there, but they remain as if unconscious. This is so funny. A Chaitan. When the jiva merges into one of these spiritual associates' bodies, with this body he serves Bhagavan. Okay? That's how this verse is taken. So I'm going to leave you with a cliffhanger right now because it's a little after the hour. And we're going to find out next week how his teaching is exactly the same as Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's teachings and all the teachings of all of our acharyas. Okay? We'll leave you there.
Oh.
Thank you, Lord Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.
What?
Franchiko, which you guess.
Oh, sure.
Bye, because Jiva Goswami is part of our disciplic succession, and there's no difference between any teaching from Vyas or Brahma down to the present day. Therefore, it's called an uninterrupted chain of disciplic succession. And how it is, we will find out next week. Bye.
She has actually gone. Okay, Jai everyone. See you next week.